My name is Rick. I'm a partner here in Grace Evergreen Church. Good to be with you this morning. I'd like to start by asking a theological but also practical question. What is God really like? We have many names for God. We just saw the great I am. God Almighty, Shepherd, Savior, Master, the Lion and the Lamb, the Alpha and Omega. Which name resonates to you? Who is He to you? Talking to people, you can get an idea of what they think about God. They see angry taskmaster God. Many see this kind of God. He has a long list of do's and don'ts. If you have to live by His rules, or He gets angry at you. If you do enough bad things, He will punish you and make you burn. We have the far away in heaven God. Those that have this view of God think He's not interested in us, and certainly not involved in our lives. He's far away, and so He's ignored. We have boring God. Christians don't have any fun. All the action is with the rowdy group. God's way is boring. We have a Walmart God. If we do good, then He will give us good things. Almost like a bartering system. We do all the right things, and then He will bless us. We also have loving Savior or loving friend. These are the ones that have had their lives touched by God and are grateful for His presence in their lives. There's a smile on their face and there's a sparkle in their eye that is divine. Every now and then you meet someone that has a special touch of Jesus in their lives, and you can really see it. Each person has a different idea of who God is. Who is He? What is He really like? Maybe the most important question might be, who does God say He is? In Matthew 11, we have the only statement in the Gospels made by Jesus about who He is. He says about Himself, I am gentle and lowly, and you shall find rest unto your souls. And so when I was asked to give this message, when I saw this verse, I knew that I needed to study this. I needed to get into this, and I wanted to learn about this because I think this is important. And I would like to ask you two key questions. Do you recognize this gentle and lowly Jesus? And do you know His rest? I'd like to start by taking a look at the context of Jesus making this statement about Himself. Matthew, the writer of this gospel, is quite deliberate about how he places the events to achieve a purpose. I'd like to show how context is used to teach us about who Jesus is by putting chapters 11 and 12 into a narrative. So this is the big picture. We're zooming out. At the beginning of chapter 11, we see John sending his disciples to ask Jesus, who are you really? And what John was really asking is, are you really the Messiah? When Jesus answered them, He gently reminded them to tell John all the miraculous things that had been happening. The lame walk, the blind see, the sick are healed, the dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. He was implying, of course, that He is the Messiah. After John's disciples left, Jesus explained to the crowd that the religious leaders weren't understanding it either. They wouldn't listen to John the Baptizer when he was speaking judgment in the desert, but they also wouldn't listen to the Son of Man, who offered grace to sinners. They said, look at Jesus, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. The next statement in this short narrative is Jesus saying, thank you, Father, that you have hidden these things from the wise and understanding and revealed them to little children. The children could see who Jesus was, even though the others couldn't. Then Jesus said something very important right in the middle of this narrative, and this will be our main text today. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. As we continue this narrative through chapter 12, Jesus gives proof that he is gentle and that he does have the authority to give rest. At the beginning of chapter 12, Jesus shows he is the Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus took the condemnation of the Pharisees against the disciples for plucking the grain and eating it on the Sabbath, responding with a story of David eating the holy bread. Sometimes it's about doing what's right, not the crushing rigidity of keeping rules. In the next event, Jesus heals a man with a withered hand on Sabbath. Again, he uses this situation to show his gentle nature and show that it's about doing what's right and showing love to the man. Jesus continues his healing to others, and Matthew quotes a prophecy from Isaiah 42. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not quench. And we'll talk more on that later. The next event is Jesus healing the demon-oppressed, blind, mute man. Jesus is giving rest and healing to the demon-oppressed, but he's also giving the religious leaders the opportunity to learn about who he is. In 12:33, Jesus reminds them that a tree is known by its fruit. Are you producing good fruit or bad fruit? Again, Jesus is giving the scribes and Pharisees the opportunity to learn about their lives and about what Jesus is doing. In 12:38, the sign of Jonah points to the resurrection of Jesus, which will show the power that Jesus has over death and hell, which will bring ultimate rest for all his believers. And finally, in this context narrative, we have the parable of the unclean spirit. The unclean spirit is removed, but can't find rest anywhere, and then returns to the empty house, bringing 7 more evil spirits with him. A warning to those that don't receive the rest that Jesus brings. It is not enough to be emptied of the bad. We need to be filled with the good. So this is the context of Jesus' statement, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. This is the big picture. Now I'm going to ask Amy to come read our text, and then we'll zoom in and take a closer look at what Jesus is saying.
I'm reading from Matthew 11, verses 25 to 30, and then later on in Matthew 12. It's from the ESV. At that time, Jesus declared, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and understanding and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And then chapter 12, verses 15 to 21. Jesus, aware of this, withdrew from there, and many followed him, and he healed them all and ordered them not to make him known. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. Behold, my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved with whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will proclaim justice to the Gentiles. He will not quarrel or cry aloud, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not quench, until he brings justice to victory, and in his name the Gentiles will hope.
Verse 28, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. There are some key words in this passage that we need to understand, and I'd like to work through some definitions. First is labor and heavy laden. These two words are very similar and just add emphasis to the heaviness that is being felt. It is the idea of growing weary, working hard, work with effort, both of the mind and body, of being exhausted and weighed down. The grammar indicates that labor is an active verb. It's the stuff we do. Heavy laden is passive. It's the stuff the world around us puts on us. Heavy laden is used to describe what the Pharisees were doing to the people. In Luke 11:46, woe to you lawyers also, for you load people with burdens hard to bear, and you yourself do not touch the burden with one of your fingers. The teachers of the law were giving the people so many laws and regulations, it was crushing the people. The working person was finding it hard to follow the restrictions placed on them, but somehow it didn't apply to the teachers. Labor. The same word is also used by Paul in 1 Corinthians 4:11. To the present hour we hunger and thirst. We are poorly dressed and buffeted and homeless, and we labor, working with our own hands. Paul knew the meaning of labor. He was so passionate about preaching the gospel that he was willing to go without food, be homeless, poorly dressed, laboring with all his might. It isn't all bad to labor, to go without, to not have everything you want, but it does have a cost. I think these two verses, these two concepts can describe life in the 21st century, right here in Canada, right here in Saskatoon. We live in a very stressful society. Many demands are subtly put on us to have the right image, to be in the right group, to appear successful even when we're not. And it's putting a lot of pressure on us. Anxiety is prevalent. Suicide is becoming more common. There is stress all around. And we work hard. We often see both parents working. Actually, this has become the norm. I'm not making a judgment. I'm just stating what I see. What a heavy load, full-time job, running a household, raising the kids. We are busy with lots of responsibilities, lots of pressures. Many in our society idolize hard work, and so we labor. And we are a society that has high expectations of what our lifestyle should be, and so we are heavy laden. In Mark 6:31, Jesus tells his disciples, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while. And so we're going to talk about rest. Away from the busyness to a very quiet place. Rest is what we need when we labor and are heavy laden. Just so you know, Jesus worked hard too and became exhausted. Many expectations were put on him. Many responsibilities in teaching, training, mentoring his disciples, plus all the requests from the crowds. He had a lot of things on his plate. But Jesus knew where to find rest. He got away from the crowds, away from the responsibilities, and spent time with his Father. Our passage talks about rest for the soul, connection with God, a spiritual rest that comes from being in right relationship with God. Jesus is not talking about a day free of physical labor and laying on the couch and watching Netflix all day, or a day of fishing or a vacation, as nice as those things might be, they are not the rest Jesus says we need, nor what he is offering. Gentle. This word is also translated as meek and humble. This word is used interchangeably 3 times in Matthew. Matthew 21:5 says, "Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden." And in our passage here, Matthew 11:29, it says, "I am gentle and lowly." Again, all these 3 words can be interchanged. In today's world, meek or gentle carries it with it the idea of passivity, mildness, giving in to others, a weakness. But it wasn't always like this. From ancient history till about a couple hundred years ago, meekness and gentleness was a form of power, not of weakness. It referred not to those who never get angry, but those who never lose their temper. The meek and gentle are not weak, but self-controlled. Not those who shrink back from responsibilities, but those who willingly choose to yield. Aristotle has said, a meek person is angry at the right things and with the right people, and further, as he ought, when he ought, and as long as he ought. Let's go back to the passage in Matthew 21:5. "Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, humble, mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden." This Jesus, humble, meek, mounted on a donkey, entered Jerusalem in complete obedience to the will and purpose of the Father. The Son of God entering as a sacrificial lamb, not on a white stallion with the fanfare of a conquering king, but as a purposeful, obedient, submissive son to his Father, all in line with the principles and purposes of the new kingdom. And what did he do when he got to his Father's house in the city, the temple? He got a whip and chased out the evil men who changed God's house of prayer into a den of thieves. He was doing what Aristotle never could: be angry at the right things and with the right people, and further, as he ought, when he ought, and as long as he ought. Meekness is a strength. Jesus showed strength as he walked in dependence upon God, submitting to his Father's purpose all the way to the cross. Lowly, of low estate, poor, cast down, humble, poor in spirit. Matthew 5:3 says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Isaiah 66:2 carries the same idea. "But this is the one to whom I will look, to the humble and contrite in spirit, who trembles at my word." Lowly are not the humbled or the humiliated. They are those who voluntarily humble themselves before God. A Puritan preacher wrote about spiritual poverty or being lowly, and I like his definition. It's awareness of one's own extreme need for God. I'll say that again. Awareness of one's own extreme need for God. He said, God undoes a man before he saves him, mars him before he makes him, takes them all to pieces, and then joins them together forever. So let's move on from our definitions and see how our text uses these. There's 4 very important verbs that we're going to look at: come, take, learn, and find. Jesus said, "Come to me." Jesus always gives you a choice. He invites you to come. Versus the Pharisees, who said, "Do this," and demanded the people to follow Moses and the traditions. Jesus gives an invitation. He never forces you. He gives you a choice. Follow me or not. Come or don't come. Taste and see that the Lord is good. He always has our best in mind, but it's always a choice. Not so the evil kingdom. I have observed what a terrible taskmaster the evil one can be. His kingdom is about tyranny, addiction, intimidation, threats. It might not start that way, but that's the way it ends. What a contrast to Jesus' invitation to come. To come means to trust him. This invitation is open to those who are exhausted and burdened down. This is exactly how the people felt under the yoke of Pharisaic legalism. Take my yoke, Jesus says. To take a yoke in that day meant to become a disciple. When we submit to Christ, we are yoked with him. A yoke is a heavy wooden bar that fits over the necks of the oxen. The stronger ox was more schooled in the commands of the master, and so it would guide the other ox according to the master's commands. By coming into the yoke with the stronger ox, the weaker ox could learn to obey the master's voice. We are imperfect, sinful people, and we cannot obey the master's voice. The call to come to Christ is not a call to try and reform our life and be a better person. That's not what Christ is saying. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I will walk with you, says Jesus. I will teach you how to obey the commands of the master. I will guide you as we make that turn at the end of the field. I will help you learn and understand the master's commands, when to stop, when to pull, and when to rest. By being the stronger ox, Jesus is the one who pulls the load. We don't have to strain, pull with all our might, because Jesus is in the yoke with us. Many of the people in Jesus' time were burdened down with laws, rules, regulations, and commandments, 613 of them. Many of these laws had come from God in the Old Testament, but many more were added by the religious leaders of the day. In contrast to the scribes and Pharisees, Jesus called the weary and burdened to come to him. You don't have to worry about fulfilling 613 commandments. Jesus gives you two to follow. Love God and love your neighbor. Plus, he says he will help you. He says he will take the strain. He will do the heavy lifting. When Jesus calls us to give him the weight of our sin, we don't merely give him some of it, but rather all of it. And it's not just the weight of our sin that we give to Jesus. We give our complete and utter inability to obey God. Rather than calling us to greater moral effort, Jesus says, "Come to me." The good news is that when we submit to him, Jesus gives all he has to us. We are counted righteous in Christ because he has obeyed the very law we could not. Therefore, when we come to him, we rest with peace before God. Praise God that in Christ we are free from self-effort, self-improvement, and a constant struggle to overcome the guilt and shame of our sin. Learn from me. In exchange for our inability, Jesus says, "Take my yoke and learn from me." The word learn is important. It's similar to the word translated make disciples in the Great Commission later in Matthew 28. Jesus is essentially saying, learn what it means to be my disciple and you will find rest for your soul. The first two commands, come and take, are decisions we need to make as we come and yield to Christ. But this step, learn, is a process. In the previous example of the yoke, I mentioned that the stronger ox knows the way of the master and teaches the weaker ox by example. We have so much we can learn from Jesus. Here are a couple things that come to mind. What was Jesus' first instinct when he saw the unclean, the leper, the prostitute? He moved towards them. He had true compassion for them. He spent time with them, touched them. Jesus reversed the Jewish system. Normally at that time, when a clean person touched an unclean person, the clean person became unclean. When Jesus, the clean one, touched an unclean sinner, Christ didn't become unclean, but the sinner became clean. We need to ask Jesus to put this instinct in us. When we see someone in hurt, in need, in trouble, vulnerable, unlovable, we need to move towards them in true compassion. The other thing that we can learn from Jesus is to live like a lamb unless God calls you to be a lion. We've already seen that Jesus was willing to ride humbly into Jerusalem on a donkey, even though he was actually the king of the universe. He was a lamb, heading to be slaughtered on the altar, the true Passover lamb. He was also filled with zeal for the Lord's house. When the money changers had changed the temple into a house of thieves instead of a house of prayer, he chased them out with a whip. He became a lion, reclaiming his Father's house. Jesus says, I am gentle and lowly. You will remember that out of the many facets of his character, Jesus wanted his disciples to value gentleness and meekness, the attitude of being lowly and poor in spirit. These are the highest values in God's upside-down kingdom. Why did Jesus have to be gentle and lowly? Why is it important to us? First of all, it's a part of who he is. He needed to reflect his own character, his nature. Being gentle and lowly is as important as his kingship and his authority over all earthly and spiritual powers. Why gentle and lowly? The new kingdom reflects their king. Nobody was expecting this kind of Messiah or king. They were expecting a victorious king riding on a white stallion, leading a great army. They were not expecting a suffering servant, marred and disfigured for our redemption. Why gentle and lowly? It makes him very attractive to the weary and heavy laden. The proud and arrogant don't need a gentle and lowly Savior. They are self-sufficient. They're independent. But we do. With our lives so full of anxiety, fear, exhaustion, we long to be comforted. We welcome a release from our sinful nature, our tendency towards selfishness, our self-centeredness. Why can Jesus give us rest? Jesus gives us rest because, first of all things have been handed over to Jesus by the Father. Verse 27. The Father has given the kingdom to the Son. No one knows the Son except the Father. And no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Jesus can bring you to the Father, bring you into his glorious, restful kingdom. Jesus can give us rest because he is the Lord of the Sabbath. He is the Lord of rest. Something greater than the temple is here. The temple and the practice of keeping the Sabbath is just an archetype of Jesus setting up his kingdom and bringing rest and peace to his people. Jesus can bring you rest from all your anxieties, stresses, and fears. He is the Lord of rest. Jesus can give rest because he has authority over the physical dimension. Jesus healed a man with the withered hand. I have seen how illness, sickness, disease brings exhaustion to the body. Jesus can bring healing to your body, your emotions, your mind, and give you rest. Jesus can give us rest because he will proclaim justice to the Gentiles. He will bring justice to victory. Every book we read, every movie we watch, the bad guy loses and the good guy wins. Inside, we hate injustice. When something is done wrong to us, we get angry and we say, that's not right. Living downtown, we occasionally hear cursing and outrage on the streets at night, anger at the injustice done to them. But Jesus can rewrite our book. He can proclaim his justice for us, for you, so that you will say, what a great finish, what a great ending. Jesus can give us rest because he is gentle. A bruised reed he will not break, a smoldering wick he will not quench. This is a quote from Isaiah 42, verses 1 to 3, a prophecy concerning the nature and character of Jesus. He will not quarrel or cry aloud, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not quench, until he brings justice to victory, and in his name the Gentiles will hope. Jesus is not loud, boisterous, noisy, not trying to draw needless attention to himself. He doesn't quarrel. He's not shouting. You won't hear him trying to outshout the heckler at the edge of the crowd. Jesus will not break a bruised reed. I have read in Isaiah's day, they would carve reeds to make a flute or a recorder. And after a while, it would get wet and soggy or bruised, and they would just crumple it up and toss it away because they could easily carve another one quickly. But Jesus does not do that. He restores bruised reeds. He does not break them up. Jesus will not quench a faintly burning wick. Lamp wicks were made of linen. The allusion is to a wick that is burning with a feeble flame from a lack of oil and is about to expire. Jesus will not blow out your flame. He will add oil. He will restore the flame to its original purpose, to give light and to shine in the darkness. In the very next chapter, Jesus heals and restores a disfigured, bruised reed and smoldering wick of a man. Jesus can protect and nurture your little flame and make it into a bonfire. Jesus can give rest because Jesus has power over the evil kingdom. He has authority over every evil spirit, everything that comes against his kingdom. This is important in third world cultures where the spirit world is much more obvious to people, but it's becoming more obvious in the Western world now as well. We have to choose whom we will serve. When the house is swept clean, we must fill it with the right things. We are warned that an empty house has the potential for more evil to come in. Jesus can fill your house with rest, with joy, with peace, with his Holy Spirit. At the beginning of this talk, I asked you two questions. The first one was, do you recognize this gentle and lowly Jesus? Do you see him moving towards the hurting, the lonely, the sad? Do you see him as the Lord of the Sabbath, the Lord of rest? Do you see his meekness and gentleness, the sacrificial lamb that rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, and then becoming a lion as he chased the evil money changers out of the Lord's house of prayer? Do you feel his powerful pull on the yoke, allowing you to move with ease alongside him? Do you feel his protective hand on your life, keeping the bruised reed from breaking and protecting that flicker of a flame from going out? As I've been working on this message for the last two months, I've seen many situations where I can learn to respond with gentleness and lowliness, to respond with grace, and to trust that God is having a purpose in that thing that is challenging me. And the second question is, do you know his rest? Can you bring him your anxieties, your anger, your stress? He says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. The burden of doing his will is not a heavy one. Can you let him write the ending to your story? Will you let him lead you in a life full of adventure of following God? He's not boring. He's not distant. He's leading the most exciting event in human history, overcoming evil with good. He is bringing justice to victory. Can you slide into the yoke beside him and let him do the heavy lifting? He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for these verses, this message, because we need your rest. We need to know you as our gentle and lowly Jesus. We need to learn to slide into that yoke with you. I thank you for your promise. I thank you that your yoke is easy and your burden is light. Amen.